Ella, a stepmother, frequently found herself engulfed in solitude. Her husband, Ryan, a driven entrepreneur, was wholly absorbed in his work. While she admired his ambition, she yearned for simple gestures of affection, something as minor as a touch or a sign that he acknowledged her. Over time, their marriage had settled into a predictable rhythm, devoid of excitement. Ella's days merged in their expansive home, with silence and her own thoughts as her only companions. This dynamic shifted when her stepson, Ethan, returned at the age of 25. Ethan radiated ethantality, possessing a self-assurance that illuminated every room he entered. Having just returned from studying abroad, he brought with him an air of sophistication and charm. Ella could not help but notice how his laughter seemed to invigorate the house, filling its previously quiet spaces. Please subscribe to my channel to enable me to share more captivating, genuine stories like this one. Additionally, ensure you watch this video in its entirety and like it, as the narrative promises to be quite intriguing. One evening, after showering, Ella stood before the mirror, drying her hair. She reached behind her to unclasp her bra, allowing it to slip off her shoulders before tossing it onto the bed. For a moment, she gazed at her reflection, her bare chest rising and falling with a soft sigh. Dressed only in her bottoms, she felt both exposed and liberated in the privacy of her room. Suddenly, the door creaked open, and Ella turned quickly, instinctively covering herself. Ethan stood there, his face flushed crimson as he quickly averted his gaze, though it lingered slightly longer than deemed appropriate. "I'm sorry, I thought you were downstairs," he apologized, his voice laden with embarrassment. Her heart raced, a blend of embarrassment and an indescribable emotion. "You need to knock," she replied. She spoke. However, her voice was weaker than she had intended. "Ethan, I apologize," murmured. He stated his intention to go yet remained still. Instead, his eyes returned to hers, his demeanor conflicted between remorse and another emotion.
Ethan ella edapti da kindertone.
"Please close the door." He complied, closing the door behind him while reluctant to depart. "I did not intend to intrude," he said, his gaze down at the ground. "But you occupy my thoughts incessantly." She became immobile. "What is your meaning?" she inquired gently. Ethan advanced, regaining his confidence. "I've consistently held you in high regard, Ella," he said. "But now that I have returned, my feelings have deepened. I observe you, and I cannot avert my gaze." Ella had a constriction in her throat, the atmosphere laden with unexpressed sentiments. "Ethan, this is incorrect," she murmured. He interjected, "Why does that seem so appropriate?" Prior to her response, he stood before her, his fingers grazing her arm, eliciting a shiver up her spine. She did not withdraw. Rather, she engaged his gaze, her determination faltering. She mumbled, "You are youthful. You do not comprehend your statements," while her tone conveyed uncertainty. "I am fully aware of what I am articulating," he responded. "You deserve to feel desired, cherished, and loved." His words dismantled her shields. She did not deter him as he leaned in. Their lips connected in a tentative kiss, which intensified as passion prevailed. Ethan's hands were positioned on her waist, his grip both solid and soft, as though he feared disrupting the enchantment. Ella surrendered to the kiss, encircling his neck with her arms. After years, she had a sense of desire, vitality, and appreciation. As they finally separated, their breaths uneven, Ella murmured with a quivering voice. Ethan said, "We need not engage in this activity." He gently said, "But we have already done so." His forehead pressed into hers. Ella shut her eyes, conflicted between her emotional need and rational thought. Nevertheless, when Ethan softly caressed her face, she realized this moment would alter everything. She recoiled, her arms reflexively crossing across her chest as the gravity of the recent events registered. Her pulse raced in her chest, and the loudness obliterated all her thoughts. Ethan remained still, his respiration irregular, his stare resolute. "We cannot," she said softly. although the statement failed to persuade any of them. This is incorrect. Ethan approached, his tone soft yet resolute. Convey to me that you did not have any emotions, Ella. Indicate that you do not see this connection between us. That he grasped her hands, positioning them delicately on his chest, and resumed kissing her. Ella attempted to unfasten his trousers as they became immersed in the moment, disregarding their relationship. She gazed at him, her lips quivering as she sought a response. The veracity was incontrovertible. Ethan, it is complex, she murmured. It need not be, he said, extending his hand, his fingertips grazing hers, igniting a sensation inside her that she could not disregard. I disregard the opinions of others. My concern is solely for you. Ella retracted her hand. With her arms firmly crossed over her chest, she stated, You fail to comprehend the gravity of your words. This poses a perilous situation for both of us, Ethan. Then let it be perilous, he said, urgency evident in his tone. I have never had these feelings before, Ella. I cannot just ignore their existence. Her will faltered beneath the force of his words and the warmth of his stare. She averted her gaze, attempting to calm her tumultuous emotions. You must leave, she said, her voice almost imperceptible. Kindly, Ethan. Ethan paused momentarily, his jaw clenching, contemplating whether to pursue the matter further. Ultimately, he acquiesced, although the anguish in his eyes was evident. He spoke gently as he approached the door. Prior to departing, he cast a backward glance at her, his eyes brimming with need. This is not concluded, Ella. I am aware that you experience it as well. The door closed, isolating Ella, her mind a tumult of emotions and need. She collapsed onto the side of the bed, concealing her face in her hands. What actions had she undertaken? The subsequent days unfolded in a fog of evasion. Ella engaged in household tasks and errands, seeking any pretext to remain occupied and distance herself from Ethan. Nevertheless, despite her efforts, she could not evade the recollection of his touch, his words, and the passion they had ignited together. Ethan, meanwhile, was not one to be overlooked. One late evening, when Ella was washing dishes in the kitchen, she heard footsteps approaching from behind her. He stated, in a calm yet emotional voice, that he could no longer maintain the facade of normalcy. Ella placed the plate down and turned to confront him. Ethan, we had an agreement, no? He interrupted, advancing closer. You agreed. I never did. Please do not complicate this further, she implored, her voice quavering. I am not attempting to complicate matters, he said, his tone gentler. I am striving to make it tangible. Before she could object, he bridged the distance between them. His hands delicately cradled her face as his lips grazed hers, timid yet seeking consent. This time, Ella did not fight. She leaned in, her hands clutching his arms as the floodgates finally opened. The kiss intensified, imbued with all the unexpressed feelings that had been accumulating. Ethan's hands grasped her waist, drawing her nearer. For the first time in years, Ella felt really desired. When they separated, their foreheads remained in contact, breaths uneven, and pulses pounding. We'll figure this out, Ethan said, his voice imbued with resolve. Together, Ella closed her eyes. Her heart was conflicted, yet she could not resist the attraction she felt towards him. For the first time, she let herself entertain the prospect of something deeper, something illicit yet irresistible. The ensuing days transformed into meticulous interplay. Every interaction between Ella and Ethan was laden with palpable tension that neither could overlook. They exchanged brief looks in the kitchen and experienced slight touches of fingers when passing in the hallway. Despite Ella's initial reluctance, the barriers she had erected around her heart began to disintegrate. One tranquil evening, when the residence descended into a serene calm, Ethan discovered Ella seated solely on the porch swing. The balmy summer atmosphere enveloped them, with the distant chirping of crickets as the sole auditory accompaniment. She gazed upward as he neared, her visage aglow from the gentle porch illumination. Are you unable to sleep? He said, his tone subdued to avoid disrupting the tranquil night. I have an excessive amount on my mind, she stated. Ethan seated himself, the swing groaning beneath him. They sat in quiet for a minute, the tension between them evident. He said that he had been contemplating you, thereby shattering the silence. Ella faced him, her lips separating in astonishment. Ethan spoke softly, his gaze fixed on hers, stating, "You occupy my thoughts entirely, Ella. You have completely occupied my thoughts, and I can no longer feign ignorance of my emotions." Her breath faltered, and she averted her gaze, concentrating on the shadowy horizon. "That IT is not that straightforward." She said. "That IT is," he said, his voice growing more forceful, "that we share genuine feelings for one another. Why resist it?" Ella faced him again, her eyes brimming with both want and trepidation. "For it transcends our relationship. There are repercussions. Ethan's associates would never comprehend." Ethan extended his hand, his thumb gliding over her knuckles. "I am indifferent to others' opinions. My sole concern is you." His words shattered something inside her. The reserve she had maintained for an extended period disintegrated, and she rushed forward, her lips seizing his in a kiss that was simultaneously fervent and gentle. Ethan reacted promptly, his hand moving to the nape of her neck to intensify the kiss. Their connection was intense, a blend of repressed need and honest emotion. The swing swayed gently as Ethan drew her nearer, his other hand positioned on her waist. Time appeared to halt as they immersed themselves in one another. The surrounding world diminished in importance. Upon separating, their foreheads remained in contact, and their breaths intertwining in the warm nocturnal atmosphere. Ella awakened, her heart racing as she gazed at him. "This alters everything," she whispered. "Excellent," Ethan remarked with a gentle smile, "because I refuse to revert to pretense." Ella emitted a tremulous chuckle, her emotions a tumult of elation and ambiguity. "We must resolve this issue," he assured her, his hands still clasping hers. The night prolonged, although for the first time, Ella had a flicker of optimism, a conviction that perhaps, just perhaps, their love might endure the next obstacles as weeks transitioned into months. Ella and Ethan encountered a more intricate network of emotions and secrets. Their fervor was intense. However, the burden of their relationship's consequences overshadowed their joy. One evening, following an especially poignant talk, Ella resolved to act. Seated together in her bedroom, she clasped Ethan's hands, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "We cannot continue this, Ethan," she declared. She said gently, her voice quivering. Ethan's expression soured. The hope that had sustained him flickered like a waning flame. "I believed we were constructing something genuine," she whispered, gripping his hands firmly. "It was beautiful yet ephemeral, as the world would not permit it." Taking a tremulous breath, her voice faltered. "I love you, Ethan. That is why I must release you." He shook his head, his eyes glistening with tears. "No, we can discover a solution. We can escape and begin anew elsewhere. I will provide you with everything." Ella did not just walk away from this situation. Her heart throbbed at his entreaty, yet she saw her obligation. "You merit more than a love founded on concealment and trepidation. You deserve a life devoid of vigilance, where you need not ponder the morality of our relationship." Ethan positioned her face, his fingers wiping away her tears. "You are the one entity that evokes a sense of correctness. In your absence, all else is inconsequential." Ella leaned into his contact, committing to memory the sensation of his fingertips on her skin and the vitality his love instilled in her. But, despite her desire to remain, she recognized that their narrative had concluded. They exchanged a final, prolonged kiss, infusing that moment with their whole love and need. Upon separating, they leaned their foreheads on one another, both reluctant to disengage. "I shall never forget you," she said, her voice almost imperceptible. "You will forever reside in my heart," he said, his voice laden with passion. With that, Ella retreated. The space between them felt like a canyon. Ethan saw her as she pivoted and departed, her figure vanishing down the corridor. He refrained from stopping her. He understood that this was her method of safeguarding them both, even at the cost of their emotional well-being. Years later, Ella sat at a cafe, drinking her coffee and observing the bustling world around her. Her life had progressed, although the memories of her time with Ethan remained, both bittersweet and treasured. She smiled gently, while she ran her finger around the edge of her cup, the remnants of their affection. A subtle reminder of the past drew her attention to a recognizable figure across the room. Ethan's eyes locked with hers, and for an instant, it seemed as though no time had elapsed. He grinned at her, his face a blend of tenderness and nostalgia. She reciprocated the smile, her heart filled with an unusual mixture of elation and sorrow. Neither party advanced yet in that momentary interaction. They both comprehended that their ephemeral love had imprinted an indelible stamp on their spirits, and at times, that sufficed.